Donald Trump was absolutely losing it at a press conference after a federal judge ruled against him and declared that the Trump regime's effort to send the National Guard and the Marines into California to conduct policing functions violates a law called the Posse Act. The judge, in a very matter-of-fact, sober, level-headed way, said the Posse Act makes it very clear. You can't use the military for policing functions. The judge did say if you want to have the National Guard federal buildings and the Marines guard federal buildings, suppose that's in the power that you have, even if we don't like it, but you can't have them become roving police forces. And because the threats by the Trump regime is that, as they've done that before, they intend to do it again in California, in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in San Diego, and other places, the federal judge, Judge Breyer, issued an injunction against Donald Trump. Again, it was a very level-headed decision, very logical, but for Trump, it was a radical leftist judge with an agenda. And then Trump tries to brag, well, actually, I won, because the judge said we can still keep the 300 National Guards people who are guarding the federal building in Los Angeles because the judge said that that's a function that they could do. They just can't be police. So Trump's really weird with the reporter here. You'll see what goes down as Trump's like, but say the other part. And then Trump tries to attack Judge Breyer. Let's play this clip.
March today in California ruled that your deployment of National Guard troops to Los Angeles was illegal. Do you have any response?
Well, it was a radical left judge, but very importantly, what did you not tell me in that question or statement that you made pretty much of a statement, I think?
Well, I was asking for your response.
No, you didn't say what the judge said, though. The judge said, but you can leave the 300 people that you already have in place. They can continue to be in place. That's all we need. But why didn't you put that as part of your statement? Because the same judge ruled exactly as you said, except the judge said that you can leave the 300 people that you already have in place. They can stay, they can remain, they can do what they have to do. Thank you very much, everybody. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Bring in Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube channel, the Talking Feds podcast, and the Talking Feds Substack. Harry, there was a 3-day trial that took place before Judge Breyer in the Northern District of California. Evidence was received. We saw that people in the National Guard didn't like this idea of being forced to do what the Trump regime was making them do. We got some damning admissions during this trial. And the court matter-of-factly just said, here's the limits. Here's what you can do. Here's what the Posse Comitatus Act says. And the audience seemed to be the Supreme Court, where coincidentally Judge Breyer's brother was once on the bench. What do you make of this all, Harry?
And they are brothers. It's right of you to point out this is a very erudite, thoughtful, refined kind of judge. And it's that kind of opinion, as you say, Ben. But this was the bigger sort of heartland issue. What had happened before with this Judge Breyer is he had first said you were improper in the way you federalized the National Guard. And you didn't have the statutory prerequisite. That mattered in and of itself, but that ruling, as you may remember, was actually then put on hold by the Ninth Circuit in a kind of cryptic opinion that we still don't know what's going to come of it, but said maybe you need to have more deference. Here, though, as you say, was the real rubber hits the road issue of what were they doing on the ground. You just saw Trump say we're allowed to stay, but he misses the total point here, which is what they're not allowed to do. And what he certainly has made it seem like they're doing is go in, bust heads, arrests, in general, become the local law enforcement. That is the essential command of the Posse Comitatus Act. When you have military and fatigues going around and busting heads, those are totalitarian regimes. The Posse Comitatus Act states this very important core principle. That doesn't happen except in very rare and temporary circumstances. And Breyer found very methodically, and after going through the history of the Posse Comitatus Act and everything, that it didn't qualify here. Now, the reason, there are many reasons why it matters, but as you pointed out, it looks as if Trump is going to be bidding to do stuff like this in Chicago and other blue cities. Of course, the not touching the greater, more violent crime cities that happen to be in red states. And so the district court does what a district court does, which is makes factual findings about what happened on the ground. And Breyer not only found that they were violating they were basically doing law enforcement as opposed to what Trump was just talking about. You can safeguard federal buildings. But he said, and probably the most important part of the opinion, it was a systemic top-down effort from both from Trump and also from the top echelon of the Department of Defense to do all this law enforcement activity. That's what we also have seen, by the way, in DC. That's what we anticipate elsewhere. They want to go in and not do that. When they go to court, they sometimes talk a nice game. They did try to talk a nice game here. Oh, we're just being auxiliary, etc. But it was clear, it was in the videos, they're going in and knocking heads and being a very aggressive police force. And so Breyer's holding here, and not just holding, but opinion, seems to me kind of sets the anchor for what's going to be a series of cases brought in different jurisdictions. And as you say, unless a higher court is willing to just overturn his factual findings, there's no basis for that. This is what they did. What's left then? This is the core legal requirement of Posse Comitatus. They did come in. They did have a systemic top-down effort to actually replace the police. And by the way, when they not simply were they not invited, they were told, we don't need you. Please stay the hell out of here. But that's just what they did. And if the core Posse Comitatus principle means anything, it must mean that, right? They've come in, and on the record that you're going to have before the Ninth Circuit and Supreme Court, and I think that will influence any record that will come up in other cases. For instance, Chicago, you have the feds coming in and doing exactly what they're not supposed to do. So I think this is going to be one of the biggest sort of core issues that are going to be worked out over the next few months as he tries to impose emergency conditions across the country. And you're going to have now higher courts having to confront flat out a factual record where the administration did exactly, and this was part of the testimony as well that you referred to, what they're not supposed to do. They went in and said, we're the new cops in town, and bust heads and that sort of thing. That's exactly whatever they said in court. This is what Breyer found, and there's all kinds of basis. So I think it really draws a very clean line that will make it very hard for a higher court to overturn unless they're really ready to just pull the rug out from under this basic core principle of the Posse Comitatus Act.
This Posse Comitatus Act has never, it always existed historically, not always, but it existed to address this kind of exact type of scenario. So one of the questions, though, Harry, right, is it constitutional? Could Congress have exercised its lawmaking powers to make this statement that, or to make this law, it has to be signed by the president, though, for it to become effective law, but that prohibits the executive branch from saying everything that Trump says. This is an emergency. I'm declaring, martial. Whatever. He doesn't have to say it. I'm addressing emergency. That was a martial law. I'm sending federal troops in to stop the emergency. What can you do? Oh, you passed a law, posse comitatus. I'm the dictator. I'm the Führer. I'm the regime. I get to decide. So how do you, is that going to become the central issue, or where do we go from here?
No, I think that's exactly right. So if the reason it's important that the facts have been laid out cleanly in Breyer's opinion is it leaves a court having to confront squarely exactly the point that you are making. Does Congress have the power to tell the executive in any situation that he can't do whatever he wants? And if that has to be if that's not the law, then we are in an authoritarian society, right? They could try to say that. I think will be the administration's argument. Well, we don't care what Congress said, but this is a principle that has been, is so enshrined, not just in the law, really, Ben, but in any kind of, democratic rule of law society where there's this fundamental distinction between military going to defense against foreign enemies and domestic law enforcement. So it would be a breathtakingly revolutionary principle for the administration to argue, which it might well, but for a court to adopt the idea that anything and anytime the executive says it's an emergency, it can do anything it wants. That's the essential sort of thrust of Trump Rule 2.0, isn't it? We'll call anything we can an emergency and justify everything and anything we want to do. So that is pretty close to the end of the rule of law for an emergency setting, where an emergency setting becomes everything in the country overall. We have nothing but emergencies, right? For tariffs, for law enforcement, for what they're doing, within the DOJ. Emergency, emergency, emergency. That's the hallmark of the strong-arm dictator from, Mussolini to Orban, and that would be the way he would have to prevail. So that would be as somber a constitutional ruling as really we've had in the country's history if the court goes for something like that.
In many ways, when you read the history of posse comitatus being passed in 1878, is smart in the sense that to me, it didn't really codify anything. To me, what it codified is what I think exists in the Constitution implicitly.
Really important point. Yeah.
Right. It doesn't feel like you should even have to go there, but just think about the double protection, if you will, that they created in 1878 as it's now being applied in 2025, because Trump first made this argument that at least apparently succeeded in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals of, hey, emergency, war powers, I'm stopping a riot, trust my version of the facts, not your lying eyes. And the Ninth Circuit, at least in this 3-judge panel, was like, okay, we'll give you deference there. But then the federal judge says, but hey, you still got to do with posse comitatus, which is you can have these people around the federal buildings. No one's saying you can't there. But the roving police force, I'm declaring you can't do that. And so anyway, it has the...
You're not even declaring, really, it's as you say, Ben. I kind of understated it because it really is that law. It's a mouthful, I know, but understood as a principle that is even more ingrained than the actual 1878 statute, which had to do with what had happened in Reconstruction and the like. This is a hallmark of a free society, that the military is not in there with boots on the ground doing law enforcement, except in the most narrow of circumstances. And that's really all Breyer's saying. Those most narrow circumstances, they're not met here. That should be straightforward under the statute, but it's also this broader principle of freedom, right? I mean, this is Tiananmen Square. This, when these sorts of things happen, it's really a total assault on democratic rule.
There you have it. Harry Litman from the Talking Feds YouTube, Talking Feds podcast, and Talking Feds Substack. Everybody make sure you subscribe to it all. Thanks, Harry.
Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.